So here's how to hit sales targets, reverse engineer what you need to do in order to hit them, and find out why you're not hitting them right now. Super, super easy and simple. So I'm going to run through exactly how we do this, and I'll just put this calculator together as well. I'm actually going to put it in the comments of the video as well. So feel free to grab it, download it for free, and use it in your own business to reverse engineer what you want. Okay, so jumping into this, we're going to look at like 3 different acquisition strategies right now, and now you can duplicate this and do this for 101 different things, but I'm going to give you 3 to work at, right? So one is cold outreach, one is partnerships, and one is paid ads, and there's different ways to calculate that on each one. So the reason most people don't hit the sales targets they want to hit is because they don't actually look at, well, what activity do I need to do in order to get that result? So we can all be guilty of this, right? We kind of go, oh, that sounds like a great goal. Great. How are we going to achieve it? Well, we need to send some cold emails. Okay, well, how many? I don't know. Right. So we just then start sending some cold emails, or we just start running some ads, and we don't actually reverse engineer and go, what needs to happen in order for us to actually get that result. So, for example, in this scenario, and just because this seems to be the magic number for a lot of people, now you might want to look at this on a 10 million range or whatever, depending where you are at in business. But a lot of people look at the 1 million mark, right? So we broke this down into 2 sections. So we've got an intro offer, and then we've got the lifetime customer value of that person as well. So when we're looking at the intro offer, that's like that first irresistible offer that you can present. Now, bear in mind, this is looking at revenue, not necessarily looking at overall profit. You may have some fulfillment costs that go into that intro offer, but it should be something that's easy to fulfill, that you can teach people that you can implement for those people, and you can ideally get them a quick result with little risk. Now, I'm not taking credit for the intro offer in terms of like having a good intro offer. If you check out 1000x leads, those guys go into a lot more detail about what makes a good intro offer. But in terms of reverse engineering the numbers, this is what we want to be breaking down. So then the LTV of a customer, now I put on here 150,000. Now you might think that sounds like a lot, Paul. Well, that depends on what your business model is. So, for example, with us as an agency model, we can charge sometimes significantly more than that, by the way. But it just depends on the results that you get for someone, right? So you get paid in proportion to the value that you create. So if you're charging, like, let's say you've got a coaching program dollars for that right now, then that's going to be what your lifetime customer value is, unless you have another product that people can buy after that period of time. So I've put the lifetime customer value as 150 here. Now, then what we want to work out is what are all the stepping stones that someone will need to take in order for them to become a customer. So firstly, they need to reply to the cold email, right? Secondly, they need to book a call from those replies. Thirdly, we want the close rate of the intro offer. Once they booked a call, like how many of those people are actually buying, and then how many of those are then turning into long-term customers that turn into that average lifetime customer value. Okay, so we've got fairly conservative with some of these numbers, but like, for example, 5% and then 20% of those people actually book a call after they reply. And then out of those, if your offer's really good, then you get in 1 out of 4 people, so 25% are then turning into the intro offer. Then from there, then you get in 25% of those people that you've got great results in the intro offer, that then they end up working with you one-on-one. Now, the key to this part as well is making sure that they're pre-qualified with the intro offer, because that's not where you're making the money. You're making the money in the lifetime customer value. So making sure with that intro offer that they do have the capacity in order to work with you after the fact if they get results with your intro offer. Now, then when we look at that, then we go, okay, well, how many intro customers do we need in order to hit our target? So here, if we're saying the target is 1 million and we only did intro offers, and so it's like one time $2,500 or $3,000 or whatever that number is. If we only did that, then we would need 400 customers from cold email. So that's quite a lot, right? Now, if we said our intro offer was, let's say it was $3,000, right, instead of 2.5. Now, just get rid of these extra decimal places. So if we look at that instead, that's now only 333. Already, just by putting a price up by $500, we need like 70 less customers almost. Okay, so the price point of your intro offer, you want it to be high enough where you don't need a ridiculous amount of customers to fulfill on, and also that you're attracting the right customer, and then also low enough that it's a low enough barrier to entry to attract the maximum amount of people in there. So if we looked at that basis and we said, okay, we're just going to do these intro offers, then we would need 333 customers. Now, then to work that out, then we want to say, okay, how many emails do we need to send? Well, we need to do 133,333 emails. That's a lot of emails, right? So just because that's a weird number. So like, let's go back to the 400 because it's an easier number to look at. So that would be 160,000 emails that you'd need to send. Now, if you're sending an offer and you're like, actually, that offer is only applicable to 2,000 people, then that's a problem, right? Because you then you haven't got a big enough market to go at. So when you're doing an intro offer, you want to make it broad enough in order for them to be able to send this many emails. Now let's look at it a little bit differently, and we go, okay, well, the lifetime customer value of our customer is 150,000. So if we want to make $1 million, how many long-term customers do we need? Well, we need 7. Now, remember, 25% of the people who buy the intro offer then go on to buy the long-term offer. Now, these numbers may be different for your business. You can put them in for whatever way you want. And by the way, the stuff that is highlighted in the kind of yellowy, creamy color, that's the stuff you edit. Everything that's in gray, don't edit that because it automatically updates. Okay, so let's say our long-term customer is 25%, so 1 in 4 people who get the intro offer turn into a long-term customer. We only need 7 long-term customers at 150K in order for this to be successful. So now instead of us sending 160,000 emails, we only need to send 10,667. So it's significantly less because we've got higher lifetime customer value. So by reverse engineering the numbers, what you can look at then is go, okay, what's the total market, addressable market that I could actually send these emails out to? Because if you've only got 2,000 people that you can send that to, and you're like, hey, in order for me to hit my goal, then I'm going to need to send 100,000 emails, or 160,000 in this case, right? If I was just doing the intro offers, and it's like, well, I've only got a list of 2,000 people that I can send it to, that's a problem. Okay, so we need to make sure that the economics of the offer makes sense. So, for example, let's say each client, like, let's say you're doing business to business enterprise, and you're like, oh, my total addressable market, I haven't got 160,000 people I can send it to. I haven't even got 10,000 people I can send it to. And I still want to make $1 million. But here's the thing. What if I could make the lifetime customer value actually, instead of being 150,000, I can make it 500,000, right? Then I only need to send 3,200 emails because I'd only need 2 customers out of those 3,200. So if you look at the number of people that we're actually sending to versus the number of people that we're getting, there's a big difference there. However, even though there is a big difference there, you'll see in no small feat, you've only got to send to 3,200 people. That's a very small amount then, if your lifetime customer value is like 500,000. So let's go the other end of the spectrum. Let's say your lifetime customer value is 10,000. Your intro offer is 2,500. Now, you might look at that and go, actually, now we're looking at it going, we need 100 long-term customers, but in order to do that, now we still need to send 160,000 emails to reach that target because we need less long-term customers, but it's like you can see how it's offset. So we'd need to be, if we've got the LTV of 20,000, then that halves the amount of emails we need to send. So this is why having a high lifetime customer value is so important, because the more cold emails you send, then it's just a numbers game then, right? So that's how you look at and reverse engineer it from a cold email perspective. Let's look at the partnership perspective. So that is actually very similar. Before we don't need to go into too much detail on this one because it's almost identical to cold outreach. The only difference is you're looking at a couple of different metrics. So instead of your did you get them to sign up for the intro offer, it's what is the intro offer referral rate. So some people, here's a cool thing about this, some people might refer to 2 or 3 different people, some people might not refer to any. Now if that gives you an average of 50% technical close rate, right, 50% actually take the intro offer, because let's say you've got one person who refers one person refers 2 people, one person refers no people. That'll give you an average of 1. So just work it out of whatever it is for your referral rate, right? And then from there, then a little bit a higher amount will go into the long-term customers. Why? Because they've come from a warm referral rather than from a cold email. So you've built up that referral rate. And then when we look at that, we go, okay, so let's say those numbers are the same, and let's just put the 1 million back in here. That would mean we'd need to send 4,444 partnership emails, right, in order for us to get 7 long-term customers out of this. Okay, so that makes a big difference when you can go, okay, so we can do cold outreach, right? Remember the numbers here. So let's put this back to the 150. So we're looking at apples for apples. So on here, cold email, and I'm not saying don't do this either, but we need to send 10,000 emails, right? Versus on here, we need to send 4,000 emails. So we might look at it and go, actually, our first strategy is going to be getting partnerships instead. Now, the hard part is going, well, who are great partners? And again, what is the addressable market of that? So who has your customer? You can go, okay, well, can I find 5,000 people that I could send a message to that I could potentially get a partnership with? And just to let you know as well, that the ones that we just started doing on our own, we're getting about 8% reply rate and about 70% open rate. Okay. So like decent numbers, and they can work, right? So some people from a response rate is going to be like just, oh yeah, you've got the wrong person kind of thing there, but like some of the people are going to be saying, yeah, let's book a call, etc., right? And then when we look at paid ads, this is a different way of looking at the numbers. So let's go back to the million a year, and we say, let's say you're selling a coaching program and it's a 10,000 a year coaching program. Then you look at it differently and you go, okay, how much is my average cost per lead? And then how many of those leads turn into sales calls? So if you've got 5% of your leads that turn into sales calls, and this, by the way, this depends on your cost per lead. So typically, if your cost per lead is a little bit higher, your lead to call ratio might be higher because maybe you're bringing in a higher quality of lead. So sometimes those numbers play out very similar as we go through. Let me just make sure that's percentage. So then we go, okay, out of those people who booked a call, what percentage of those people showed for the call? So if we look at this, we got 50% on this one, right? And then we look at the close rate, and then we say, okay, out of the people who showed for the call, how many of those did we close? And we closed 20%. So 20% is kind of like the industry average. Sometimes you get higher, sometimes you get lower. It depends how much framing they've had before the call. So what I mean by framing is like, what are all the pieces of content that they've seen beforehand? How warm are they when they come to the call? Do they know anything about your business or not? So that's going to affect your close rate overall. So then we look here, our cost per call is $200, right? Our cost per showed call is $400. And that's really more important than the cost per call. This cost per call really on its own is just a vanity metric, because what's the point of having calls if you're not actually speaking to those people on the phone? So what you want to ask is, how much does it cost me to get someone actually speaking on the phone? And then we look at what the cost per sale is. So for example, in this situation, the cost per sale would be $2,000 because we've reverse engineered the numbers. And if you look at the sum up here, right, so we've got B11, so cost per show call divided by B8, so the close rate. Why? So that means 1 in 5 people. So if it basically you're just taking the $400 and timesing it by 5, right? And then if this was 25%, for example, then it'll be 1 in 4 people. So then look what happens to your cost per sale. It goes down from 2,000 to 1,600. And also look what happens to your return on ad spend. It goes from 5x. So if we just go back, it goes from 5x to 6.25. Right, so you put in another turn on your return on ad spend. So then when we break it down a little bit further, we go, okay, so how many leads do I need to generate this revenue number? And then how much ad spend do I need to put in order to get that number? Well, if we look at it, so we say the number of leads needed, okay, is 10,000. And then how much is our cost per lead? Well, our cost per lead is $20. So if it's $20 times by 10,000, that makes 200,000, which is now giving us a 5x return on our investment, right? But here's the interesting thing is you can play with these numbers in different ways, right? So if someone's coming completely from cold, for example, you might say, I want to do a lead magnet first. So a lead magnet, like getting someone to give their email and then give them the offer to book a call on the next page. Now, if you do that as a lead magnet, the first thing that you would do, your cost per lead is probably going to drop versus go and watch this video sales letter and opt in for that. Why? Because people know the sales process. They want something tangible that they can get straight away. Like, for example, for us right now, we're getting leads for like around $2. Okay, depending which market we go into. If we go to the US market a little bit more, it's closer to $5. But like, if you look at that and say $5, right, and then the lead to call ratio is going to be less, right? Why? Because they're not coming in expecting to be booking in for a call. They're coming in expecting to get your lead magnet or whatever that is. Now, if the lead magnet is congruent with what happens in the call, that makes a lot more sense. So then let's say our lead to call ratio goes to 5% instead. But you'll notice a $5 cost per lead and a 5% lead to call ratio is actually more profitable overall because our cost per show call now goes down to $200 instead of $400, and it gives us a 10x return. It means we can halve the amount of spend and double the profitability of the business. Now, if you knew you were getting a 10x return, how quickly would you scale that? And the problem is, a lot of the time when things are working, people just don't spend enough, right? So this is hopefully a video that you can watch maybe multiple times. That if you look at your business right now and you go, we're at 5x return already. So let's say you are $10 a lead and a 5% lead to call ratio, and you're like, okay, yeah, we put $1 in, we get $5 back. Great. And they go, I don't know how to scale. Spend more money. Right? Just spend more money. Because right now, if you're spending, for example, $200,000 a year, so $16,000 a month, then, well, what if instead we go, do you know what? I want to double my revenue this year. Okay. So instead, we want to make 2 million. Okay, what do we need to do? Well, we need to spend 33 grand instead a month. So you could break that down by day as well, right? So if we broke it down by day, we just do that. And let's say just average of 30 days a month, just for simplicity, right? So it means we need to spend $1,000 a day. Now, if we look at this at 1 million, we're spending 556 a day. So 200,000 a year might sound like a decent chunk. However, 556 a day doesn't sound crazy, right? 1,000 a day still isn't too bad if you know you're getting 5x back. So the only thing that stops the scale here is once you've got this working, when you start putting more money into ads, there is a lag effect that happens. So if you are, for example, you're getting someone coming in as a lead today, they might not book a call for 3, 4, 5 days' time. They might not book a call straight away. They might have to go through your nurture sequence first. And it's not until they've gone through your nurture sequence that they actually go ahead and buy. So you're going to put more money into ads, but it's not going to come out today. It maybe doesn't come out for 7 or 14 days. So then that makes you all nervy. And then what happens is that you start to turn up the ad spend, and then you turn up the ad spend and then you're like, oh my God, it's not working. So what do? You go back to what you did before. And you go back to what you did before, and then you spend the same amount as what you did before, and then you stop growing. And why do you stop growing? Because you're not spending enough, right? So then what happens is then we go back to the comfort blanket. We default back to where we were before. So at the 556, like for example, per day, we go, well, it's all right. I know I was making profit there, so I'm going to go back to that. Now, what also happens as things grow and scale is, if let's say you want to go to 5 million a year. So when you go to 5 million a year, what happens? Well, you go into a broader market. So when you go to a broader market, the cost per lead goes up. So cost per lead maybe goes to $17, right? And then your lead to call ratio maybe drops from 5 down to 4. And then the show rate maybe drops to 45. Now, look what's happening here. We're starting to lose out on the profitability. So how do we fix that? Well, instead, we'd stop focusing quite as much on these metrics. We still make sure we optimize them as much as possible, and maybe we can get the cost per lead back down to $15, for example, right? So we're you're seeing we're making some incremental gains. But then if we look at the show rate, maybe we can get that back to 50, okay? And then we focus on like the close rate. If we can get the close rate up to 25, because we've refined, we've got all this data back, so we should really know what's working in that respect. But also then the lead to call ratio, right? We're looking at that and we're going, that's still not, maybe we just can't get it back up at the moment, okay? So what do we do instead? We look at this number here, the LTV. Why? Because if you can spend more to acquire a customer than anyone else, you're going to win. So if you want to get back up to this 5x return on ad spend, right? Because you're seeing right now, you're having to spend 1.5 million to get to that 5 million goal, okay? So if you want to have a higher return on ad spend and have to spend less and have less risk, then what if you could take your lifetime customer value and change it from $10,000 to $15,000? Let's look at what that looks like. Look, puts you straight back to a 5x return. And now you're spending $500,000 less, and almost like, so you spend a third less on ads. Let's just neaten that one up a little bit, right? You're spending a third less on ads because you have a higher lifetime customer value. So how do you get a higher lifetime customer value? Well, a few things. Number one is whatever you're selling as your core product for like 10,000 or 12,000 or whatever it is right now, like have another option above that. Now, not everyone's going to take that option. That's okay. However, if you get like 10% of your people who buy your high ticket to buy an ultra high ticket offer, right? So let's say you've got an offer that's 100,000, and you might go, I can't even fathom in my head like building a $100,000 offer. But could you build an offer that's $8,000 a month? Right? That becomes a lot more achievable. Well, guess what? 8,300 a month is roughly $100,000 offer. Now, you potentially could collect that cash up front, right? If you collect it up front through financing, and they could pay that out every month. It could be the fact that instead of you having an ultra high ticket there, instead you go, okay, well, what if I get 30% of my buyers to buy something else that's around a similar price? So instead of 10% buying this ultra high ticket, you get 30% of your buyers spending another $10,000 with you, right? If we say 25%, just because it's easier numbers, that would be another $2,500 on your lifetime customer value, right? Why? Because you get 10,000 divided by 4, which is 25%, essentially, 1 in 4. And then that would be 2.5K on top of the 10K that you're already originally getting them to spend. So the cool thing about this is, like, we've done this with clients as well, where someone goes and buys a high ticket-ish offer, for like $6,000, $7,000. And then we have an immediate one-click upsell on the next page for a $2,000 offer. Now, that $2,000 offer, if you just put that out there normally, it would go okay. But because you're putting it on a upsell page after they've just spent $7,000, $2,000 doesn't sound like as much. You see this in car dealerships and everything a lot as well. It's like, oh, would you like the paint protection? Would you like the extended warranty? All those kind of things. Like if you went in with your car into the garage and they said, hey, we can offer you extended warranty, and originally you were just going in for an MOT, which was maybe, $50 or whatever. I don't know how much it is for an MOT in the US, but over here it's about £50, right? So you went in for that and then said, we can give you extended warranty and paint protection as well, included, and it's going to be an extra $600 you're like, wow, that's $600. That's 10 times what I've just paid, right? That's what the price anchor is going on in your head. However, if you went in to buy a brand new car and you just spent 20 grand on a car, and then they said instead, hey, do you want extended warranty and paint protection? It's only $600. Be like, $600 on 20 grand? Yeah, it's just another $600, right? It's not going to make a lot of difference to the monthly payments. Okay. So that's how you can increase LTV, because anchor that at the right part of the journey. And then all your job is to just go through these metrics and go, are we hitting these metrics? And people overcomplicate what conversion rate optimization is a lot of the time. And they go, I don't know where to focus. I don't know where to put my attention. Well, lay out your metrics of what you're hitting already, then reverse engineer what would need to change in order for you to hit that goal. So, for example, like we're at the 10K, and if you're like, hey, my current cost per lead is $10, but my lead to call ratio is 3, and do you know what? My show rate is like 75%, which is pretty good. And then my close rate is at 25, so everything's good there, but I'm not getting enough leads to turn into calls. Well, what do I need to do there to fix that? Because you see here we're at 5.63 ROAS. If we get that lead to call ratio to go to 3% to 5%, that's not 2% improvement. Like, for example, if you took it from 3% to 6%, that's not a 3% improvement. That's a doubling your conversion rate, right? Massive difference. And how do you do things like that? Well, you add in follow-up sequences, right? You re-look at any video sales letter that you've got right now. Look at the first 60 seconds. That's a really good place to start. But if you do that, look, just by changing that one metric, we've gone from a 5x return to an 11x return. Massive, massive, massive difference by changing one metric. Why? Because we highlighted what the bottleneck was and then focused all our attention and effort on fixing that particular bottleneck. And just to make this a little bit easier as well, you can do, like, for example, you might want to put a current rate, right? And then, like, in the sheet, you can use some conditional formatting, for example, where you can say, okay, it's currently at 4%, right? So let's just, that'll just go weird. So let's say it's at 4% at the moment, and then just use this little conditional formatting over here. And then we say format if the cell is greater than what's in the target one, right? Then it's green. So we'll just put in B6, right? So if it's greater than that, so for example, here you can just put a custom formula that says like E6, so the current rate. If that is greater than B6, whichever is in here, then make that green. And then you can do the same thing in reverse, right? So if it's less than, and then we just change it out so you can see the example, right? If it was less than, then we might want to make it red, for example. Probably not that color red, but then you can make it red. And then all you can do is like look at this very easily as like a daily dashboard and go, right, what's current rate for each one of these? Where are we on track? Where are we off track? And then based on that, that's where you put all your focus, energy, and effort until you fix that metric. Now, but what do we do if there's multiple metrics that are off pace? Well, we look at the one that we can affect the most. So if I just get rid of that for a second. So if we look over here, right, let's say we're already got a baseline of 75% on our show rate. And we're like, well, our target is 80. Okay, so we could focus there. Or our lead to call ratio, well, our target is 6%, and we're currently at 3. Now, if you look at that, some people may look at that and go, okay, well, I've got 5 percentage points difference to get from 75 to 80, so I should focus on that versus a lead to call ratio, which is at 3 and I want to get to 6. So, but the difference is if you go from 3 to 6, you are doubling conversion rate. If you go from 75 to 80%, you're only getting marginal gains. So what you want to do is focus on the biggest growth lever And pro tip, it's usually the one that's kind of like starts off at a low number that you can affect the most, right? So the further you go up the chain, like the further down the kind of the sales process, the harder it will have to have those effects on things based on like that how high that metric already is. So if you're already over 50% for a certain metric, like you can't, it's very, very unlikely that you're actually going to double that conversion rate. However, if you're at 3 or 4%, you have the option to double or triple or quadruple that metric in certain instances, right? So, for example, lead to call ratio. You might have the same thing for, like, let's say you're selling a front end offer and your front end conversion rate is at like 1%. Well, if you took that to 3%, you've more than doubled conversion rate, you tripled conversions, right? So it's a massive, massive difference versus, okay, well, the amount of people who we actually get to show for a call is at 75%. Well, what if we take it to 80? You're not going to have the same amount of effect. So you have to decide where you can put the most effect on each growth lever. Once you've done that, that's going to really drive everything else and drive the sales forward. So I hope this has been helpful. I will drop the link to this in the description. So you can download this for free, use this in your own business, just make a copy of it, and put the current run rate in. That I might update this over time as well, just to flesh it out a little bit more. But this is how to hit your sales targets, and it's just like simples it down to the fundamentals and the basics of exactly what to do. If you want more help and support, just reach out, and we'd be happy to help. We've got numerous different things that can help depending where you are at what stage in your business. So, and also if you want a load more free trainings, just comment the word trainings, and we can send you those over absolutely free. So have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you soon.